Welcome to Travel Market Life, your companion for industry insights and professional business development. Travel Market Life. Join us by webcast, video or podcast.
And welcome to Hoteliers Voice, Season 4, with Diogo Vaz Ferreira from Clink Hostels. Diogo Vaz Ferreira is Head of Commercial at Clink Hostels since 2021. He previously worked for Accor and Hilton, having worked in guest experiences, revenue and general manager positions. He is also part of the management board chairing the accommodation panel at the WISE Travel Confederation, which is a global not-for-profit membership organisation dedicated to promoting and developing opportunities for the youth, student and educational travel industry. Today we're going to explore the hostel market and how it's evolving, trends within this traveller group. We're going to learn more about Diogo's career and specifically how he's developing the commercial performance of Clink Hostels.
Travel Market Life.
Travel Market Life is backed by Haynes Marcoms, a B2B marketing communications PR consultancy specialising in the technologies, travel, hospitality and property sectors. Marketing, PR and social. Build profile, gain momentum, shape strategy with Haynes Marcoms.
Travel Market Life.
Joining me now is Diogo Vaz Ferreira. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. I'd love to learn a lot more about Clink Hostels and the markets in. What can you tell us about it?
Thank you, Ryan, for the invitation. Clink Hostels is one of the oldest and at the moment the biggest independently owned chain of European hostels. We have been in the market for long. We started our operations in London, UK, first with one property. Then we went after a few years to a second property. When the business was mature at 18 years old of age, 2015, we decided to expand the business to Amsterdam, building and actually reconverting a building that used to be part of the Shell company into a hostel. That was quite a nice reconversion. And then just before COVID, so perfect timing, we decided to expand not only by acquiring two other properties in Amsterdam, but also to start the build of a hostel in Dublin that at the moment we just opened a few months ago. And that's about it. Clink, was all started with two sisters that after traveling all over the world, they decided to take, the business with their own hands and try to create a perfect hostel, of course, with the support of the family in London. And you still have those vibes because it's still owned by the family, by the Dolan family, and you still have a lot of that family type of business and that family atmosphere in our company. And the second part of the question, what we have been busy about, basically, of course, we are in a very dynamic world. Hostels are very dynamic, more than ever. And I think the type of hostels and the type of guests we have now, they are very different from 10, 20, 25 years ago. If before, I think the type of guests we're having in hostels were mainly driven by price, by a question of budget sensitivity. I think in today's world, we have many more trends that you should consider. And Clink has been very smart in adapting it. And I think we are also the perfect size. We are too small to be big and too big to be small, in the sense that we are big enough to be relevant. As I said, we have 6 properties, building the 7th one as we speak in Lisbon. But basically, we are the biggest independently owned chain in Europe, as I previously said. But we are not that big that it becomes kind of a corporate nightmare to change every time we want to implement something. So I think it's the perfect size.
I mean, it is absolutely fascinating of the hostel market at the moment because it has hugely evolved. And I was a massive hostel fan. I'm still a massive hostel fan. And it's somewhere that I do always consider to stay when I'm traveling, particularly when I'm solo. But with Clink, let's just go back to some numbers for a second. So how many, is it beds? Do you count beds? How many beds do you have then approximately across?
So we're close to 3,000 beds.
Wow, that's a lot of people to be dealing with at any one time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when it comes to like keeping that ethos of a hostel, how does the company and culture sort of maintain that focus and delivery that you are a hostel and not being distracted by other sort of accommodation sectors, as so is easily the case in our industry?
It is, and especially for us, it's even more challenging because of two things. First, not only our ethos of a company that we take very serious, but also the fact that we are a family business and we want to remain authentic to our values and to our morale and to our ethics, and not only like a corporate company that only focus on purely on profit. But the second part that I usually say that it becomes more difficult for hostels is because the hostels they have the guests that hotels will have tomorrow. So the trends that you, for example, you mentioned one of them, like the solo traveler, and especially the female solo traveler that now is a big thing. There are trends that we see earlier in hostels that in a few years are going to be in hotels, because now these clients they have 18 years old, 20 years old, 25 years old, and then became like 30, 35, 40 and start going to hotels. But these trends have been identified before at hostels. So it seems that in one end we used to be much more old style backpacker hostels, not accompanying, like, let's say, the modernity and the different facilities and the different options you have in hotels. But then when the changes came, especially with COVID, it kind of accelerated way more, because we talk with COVID about remote working and people traveling more because of remote working, the digital nomads, all those concepts, they touch much more hostel than actually hotels. So we went from being very old style, like being considered like we only stay there because of price, and now we are on top of the wave of the changes and transformations. What is
I do
interesting?
remember when I was first staying in hostels about 10 or 12. No, it's longer than that. I have to lie. 15, 16 years ago, they were the only places that had free Wi-Fi often.
Yeah.
Hotels you would either wouldn't have the Wi-Fi or you'd have to pay for it. You'd have the little cafe shop round the corner, the internet cafe shop. But then there would be a couple of login points and free Wi-Fi at the and you would literally be logging in to the one and
Yeah.
only Wi-Fi network that the hostel had. But it was that sort of that community feel that you get within the hotel and hostel. And I certainly was doing that both as a solo traveler, as a backpacker, but also when I was away on conferences, as a
Mhm.
contractor, as a freelancer, a digital nomad, I couldn't afford the hotels. And it was just wonderful that you had, accommodation there that could actually meet a different budget. So when it comes to trends post pandemic, what are some of the things that you're seeing within the hostel markets, and how is that changing your sort of consumer group that's coming to stay with you?
Yeah, I think after the pandemic we all faced, I think again we talked about one of the biggest trends, the remote traveling, and this basically is not only the for the fact of the pandemic, people realized how important freedom was and what was taken away. Everything that for our entire life we got it for granted, like traveling, going out to the restaurant with friends. Out of a sudden, for 2 years, it was like stolen away from us. So people all wanted to travel, all wanted to travel solo, even especially females. Was maybe a cultural change. Also, the fact that with the low cost, of course, travel became more accessible to everyone, but also culturally speaking, in a lot of different cultures, became more acceptable for a woman to travel by herself, what is still unfortunately not the case with some of the cultures in the world. So that became a real trend. The digital nomad that we also previously talked, the fact that we now have, of course, a much more flexible policy when it comes to work, that you can work several weeks or even entirely remote. That has an impact, but it also become as an opportunity for us, because then we can have different type of guests that we didn't have in the past, but it also became a challenge in a way, because right now, if we know that hospitality was for many people already very difficult to hire, especially in operations, because of the low salaries, because of the high pressure, because of the long working hours, the fact that you have to work when others are having fun. On top of it, you now have companies that you can be working on a simple entry level job like a customer support. You work full from home and you have a comfort that you cannot have that in operation. So COVID opened a few doors and closed a few ones. Hiring at the moment is extremely complicated, and we have a lot of discussion with colleagues that on-site staffing became way more challenging. And other things that were discussed at some point, they've been discussed for many years, and there's like a big word that everyone talks about, the green and sustainability. And it's funny because it has proven that attitude and behavior is different. And there was a big study by Google on that sustainability, and basically proved that when people say, "Oh, sustainability really it really matters a lot to me," but then comes actually to a booking decision or purchasing power decision, actually people don't follow it. So it's one of those things that it looks nice for you to say it, but actually in reality, when you go to buy it, you always tend up to go to the cheaper or the nicer or to nice location. And I think when it comes to hostels, because our guests are younger than hotels, and different generations are a bit more rebel. We've always been 18 once in our lives before. I think they are more outspoken. And I think sustainability and some other policies, like for example, gender policies that I like to talk in a while, are becoming more relevant for hostels than, for example, for other hotels. And some brands, like especially the Selena, is a perfect example of a hostel brand, even if it's kind of a luxury hostel brand, if I might say. I think they work it very well. That mix between the digital nomads, sustainability, and the interaction between local communities and expats, foreigners, I think they have done it very well. And another key trend that I think is we also start in this discussion in hostels more than hotels is about the gender policies. We all know that there's like a big topic about gender, identification about gender, identify yourself, what should be the freedom you should have, depending on the different culture and depending on the different countries you're living in. And hostels, because we have the mixed dorms and sometimes the female-only dorms, it raises all type of questions. And for example, if I have someone that was born a man but identify herself as a woman, should we allow her to stay in a female dorm? Yes or no? And it brings all sorts of discussions about security, safety, well-being for the other guests, open-minded, all that. So a lot of these trends I've been discussing again, because we have the hotel guests of tomorrow. I think they've been discussing today on hostels, and very, very, very interesting. And the other trends, not really trends, but things that are worrying us as an industry, I think one there are some specific, of course, regional topics. And for example, the Olympic Games in Paris, I think is going to be a big hit because prices are extremely high in Paris during the summer that might generate extra demand from all of the cities in Europe. But I'm more regional national things. But I think worldwide is really okay. The after COVID, the digital nomad, working remote, how this is going to take us, how this is going to evolve with the working market. The female solo traveler and the female traveler and trying to identify what are the woman looking for and trying to adapt the tourism more in that sense, but also the different gender policies and how can now we be open-minded and respectfully without to everyone without hurting some opinions, let's say that way.
No, I can certainly understand, and that is a real challenge that you've got to sort of like walk on a tightrope there to make sure that you look after your customers, those that are going to be coming back and returning and spreading the word, and also the reputation at the same time. As you say, security is absolutely key. And what's particularly interesting about you, Diogo, is that you don't come from a traditional background for hostels. You have actually come from the hotel industry, having worked at Accor and Hilton within revenue roles. You've also worked within guest experience. Tell me, how has your particular career evolved and adapted over the years, and what's taken you to take on this role at Clink Hostels?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because, of course, when I mentioned to people that I went from Hilton, Accor, to those like big brands to hostels, it looks like my father when I told him for the first time, said, "What have you been drinking today?" No, it looks for a downgrade, and I can say maybe when you look at my LinkedIn profile, in that sense, might look a downgrade, but it's not at all. So I joined hospitality because I was passionate about traveling, getting to know more people, different languages, different cultures. And then when I start working hospitality, as I said, I tried different departments, but very soon, very early in my career, I found that my place was in revenue management. I think I see myself as a good communicator, but also I'm good with numbers. I think revenue management is that perfect balance between strategy and communication, that you have to have kind of both, because you can be the smartest guy with Excel, but if you're not able to explain that to your colleagues to make sure that we all move the same direction, won't work. And in the revenue management, I worked for the biggest brands, as you said, and little by little, I got very attracted by the hybrid accommodation. So not only hostels, but like other brands that they have kind of a mix of products. For example, the previous called Student Hotel, now called Social Lab, but a lot of co-working spaces. Once again, things that became with COVID. Because in hotel, we are optimizing room, and of course, the RevPAR, it's the main KPI used for evaluating performance. In hostels, we are not only performing or trying to increase the performance per bed, but we can go even further per square meter. Because in hostels, I have the decision if I want either to have a private room, for example, double room and sell it pretty much at the same level of prices, for example, sometimes of a 3-4 star hotel, depending on the market, or if I have a dorm, for example, of 6-8 beds, what is the one most profitable for us in terms of guest experience, in terms of F&B expenditure, average spent, guest experience? So there are a lot of metrics that are taken in consideration, and is way more difficult because you have much more variables to evaluate and to work in revenue management in hostels than hotels. Booking windows tend to be shorter, so you have to really make sure that your strategy is right. Distribution channels tend to be a bit more limited because most of the time you don't really have corporate accounts. You might have like leisure groups and series, but corporate, the B2B is still quite limited. So it's mainly B2C, and the B2B is only focused more on the leisure market. And also the vertical markets that we target are normally much more limited, are either like events, sports, or educational. So at the end of the day, we have much more limited target market and more kind of a niche in the market, but with also sometimes different distribution channels. So it's more challenging enough to take a lot of different metrics in the equation. And I found that was the right challenge. I think it was very challenging to try something new. And even if I'd already started 2 years ago, they are over 2 years ago, it's all every day. Things that I learned with hostels and the industry I really felt in love.
I mean, I don't think it was downgrade, particularly in the way that the industry has sort of evolved massively over the last few years for hostel market, and how, you know, you've really got to be thinking about balancing the books so much more, and the I guess the amount of wear and tear that you often get in a hostel compared to a hotel, and just making sure that the upkeep is there. And as you say, you know, 3,000 rooms is not a short number of inventory that you're dealing with,
Yeah.
and distribution is interesting. And just tell me, I mean, what is the average booking window?
Yeah, it depends per market and per hostel because, of course, our hostels are quite different. But I would say on average is around 40 to 30 days. Whereas in hotels tend to be a bit special in, resorts tend to be even more, but even corporate with some nice amount of business tend to be like 3-4 months in advance for for the high season. And there's like 30 to 40 days, but our smaller properties is even like 20 to 30 days. So even smaller than that.
I mean, you don't happen to, or maybe I'm showing my age now, you don't happen to get people just walking in with their Lonely Planet book, do you?
It still happens, but it's much more reduced these days because people can book so easily. Because if before you had to contact a travel agency or call someone, right? So you'd wait to get to the city to go to the hotel. Today you can be on the train or even the airport in 5 minutes with the application. You can easily book a bed. So we still have walk-ins, especially our hostel in London, Clink 261. It is close to King's Cross. It still gets a nice amount of walk-ins considering to the size, but it's still like is a much smaller percentage than it used to be because it became so easier to book a room now that most of people actually get it with the booking. What happens quite often is people, for example, that they are traveling, and especially it happens a lot with hostels and backpackers, they're not really sure what they're going to do tomorrow, right? They
Yeah.
book one night in Amsterdam, they have fun, they like it, they meet people, actually they extend their stay and they end up staying actually 4 or 5 nights when initial plan was staying only one night. That happens a lot. But walk-ins that really enter in the hostel without reservation happens is less often than used to be.
Now, revenue, traditionally it's rooms. You're dealing with beds and square footage, and we're obviously seeing companies now taking a more integrated revenue approach. So how would you describe the journey at Clink, and where's the opportunity for perhaps earning additional revenue through the stay?
Excellent question. It's something that we did a lot of changes in the company, me and my team, but also we are still doing. And before, because for hostels, the F&B and everything that is ancillary revenue takes even more relevance, right? Because if you're selling a hotel room for 200 euros, then you might, upsell the breakfast, you might upsell the dinner, but percentage-wise, if you are not a resort, it's very difficult for you to have a strong percentage of F&B revenue of an hotel. And especially if you are in the city center, there are so many options around you that hotels, restaurants tend not to be very popular unless they have a very strong concept. In hostels, it's different because you have so many young people, they go there to party. And if you buy a bed for 50 euros and then you spend like 20 at the bar in a few beers, is almost half of what you spend in the bed. So percentage-wise, the percentage of F&B revenues ancillary tend to be between 20 and 30% in hostels, what is above the average of the hotels. If I'm not considering, of course, the resorts, that tend to be 40 to 50%. And then the way we also have changed, because then the second part of your question is before, the way we were doing upselling was pretty much old school, like we are sending emails with the confirmations and then when guests were contacting us or at check-in, we're trying to upsell. We installed a tool called Oki that it pushes basic automated upselling. And with that, we generated, compared to what we were doing before, an incremental of 100,000 euros per year, what is amazing. But that was only the first part. So now, and it's pretty much based on pre-arrival automated upselling. Now, with another partner of us that is called IHTF, that we have installed automated an AI chatbot in our website, and both because they can be integrated with each other. What we're going to do is everyone who contacts our chat and make a reservation, they can immediately have an upsell for a breakfast, for a towel, for whatever they need for their stay. But also in stay, what we're going to do at the moment, actually, we're launching next week with a WhatsApp. Basically, the guests that are in-house, they can ask everything via WhatsApp, and they can write something simple like, I want a breakfast. Immediately, the AI generates like an upselling option. You confirm, bam, done. And because it's connected to your system, it's automatically charged. And also, what we're going to do something even cooler, because we think that's going to be a bigger trend tomorrow, is everything that is a voice command. So a guest can actually be WhatsApp, hey, Clink, I want a breakfast, or I want a towel, I want a late checkout tomorrow because tonight's going to be party. That the AI will immediately detect what the guest answers as is requesting. It will answer either in voice or by message. The guest can choose and immediately do the transactions. So we expect that actually with all those changes, that incremental revenue that already went up by more than 2 times with that pre-arrival automated, that going up by 4 or 5 times what it was 2-3 years ago. So I think this is really the entire pre-arrival and in-stay configuration and own the entire guest journey in a different way.
Fascinating. I mean, you stole the question right out of my mouth before I even had a chance to ask it, which was, how are you upping the game in revenue? Is there any other software or tools? You mentioned Oki, HiGiffy, any others that you're sort of using?
Yeah, and of course, some of them I'm even mentioning them, and we are about to close the deals. So I'm spoiling some of the surprises for our Clink loyal members. Another one is also a company called Bookline. That basically what happens is we have, of course, a business hours in our reservations team, and after the 6 p.m. that normally the business hours are, well, the office is closed, the calls are transferred to the hostels, but sometimes they might be too busy, or even at night, sometimes we have only one night auditor working, and sometimes the calls are a bit lost. And especially because the difference of the time zones, and we have so US and Australia that are in our top 5 of guests, to give an example, what we're going to have is we're going to have a system that the guests will call us and immediately, like they are talking with a robot, that will make your reservation and basically send to your WhatsApp. So these are the dates and the hostel required, you want to confirm. You click confirm, is done. But even if the guest doesn't wish to confirm straight away, next morning when the reservations team starts, they will be having the details of all the guests that try to book overnight with pending reservations. And then my team will contact them. Hey, by the way, Ryan, my name is Paul. I work for the reservations team at Clink. Would you like to proceed with the booking you tried to do last night? And it's a sort of sales, so we're selling even when you are sleeping, you know? So it's a sort of sales that we were not trying. So I think that's really upping the game. But then, of course, when it comes, then it becomes a very tricky game, right? Because when we talk about efficiencies and the AI, hospitality is tricky because we are a people business, people for people, right? And it's always a fine balance. Of course, you can find more efficiencies, more AI, more automation. But at the end of the day, some people are looking for a people touch. And when I say that I'm now a head of commercial, but in my heart, I'm still a revenue manager, inside. And there's all these next question: will robots replace revenue managers in a couple of years? I don't know if that was one of your future questions. And the answer is I don't think so, because what the machines can help us to do is right now, today, a revenue manager can manage many more hotels than in the past because there's much more data, but you still need a human brain behind to make those decisions, because a machine can manage what is expectable, cannot manage what is unexpectable. You didn't have any tool in the world that knew how to react perfectly to the COVID. The prices were all over the place because the machines were, this didn't happen any of the years of the data. We have the historic data. We still had a human to say, no, this is something different. So we still need a human brain, but of course, now we can manage many more hotels, many more data points, and focus in many sources of revenue, because you said something very interesting. A revenue manager in the past, they were only focused on pretty much rooms revenue. Now they are focused on F&B, parking revenue. Sometimes they're doing even case for parking, for private parkings of the hotels, spa revenue. So they can focus on many more streams, many more hotels, and having much more complex. But I still think we need a human brain behind.
Thank you. Now, as you said, you've got a number of systems that you've put in place over the last couple of years that are really helping you up your game and move forward, evolve the business, and really connect much more on a deeper level with your guests in a way that they are expecting. So how do you identify and select your technology partners?
Well, the key thing is, of course, we work with many software providers, and in hotels, of course, the main one is our property management software, our PMS. We work with Muse. We are actually the first hostel that decided to work with Muse, and now they are a market leader. Not because of us, just happened to be. We just chose wisely back then, and it needs to be integrated with our PMS, because if it's not integrated, if it will generate more manual work, which will open the space to mistakes, will open the space to more resource and more time being wasted. So the first question is kind of like a deal breaker. Is it possible to be integrated with our current system software? Yes or no? That's the first question. Then of course, we know what you're looking for, because me as a head of commercial, I get maybe 5 to 10 emails on a daily average, people trying to sell me stuff. And of course, I need to filter. I don't like to be the bad guy and saying no, but I'm not going to have a call if I know that I have already something that provides me. If you cannot give me something that I don't have, or something that I have, but either doing cheaper or better, I will not take it. So I have to know exactly what I want and keep constantly reviewing our tech stack and understanding what we can do better. And then once I decided is, can you be integrated with our systems? Is it relevant for now? Is there a really serious return on investment? And keep always trying, what can I do better? And they are also on top of it, for us, the human part is important in the sense that we have, and I don't give examples because there will be also my listening to this. We have great companies that have great softwares and great products, but for example, they have very poor customer support. So we also, for when you choose our partners, customer support and the connection, the relationship is very important, because we have to make sure that we are in the same mood when it comes to evolving, to trying new things and working together on partnerships. That's very relevant for us.
Fantastic. I mean, obviously, as you say, there's so many providers out there, and they offer a range of functionality, features, integrations being a big one, that it needs to work with your existing systems. So that's great to learn. Now, as I say, you've worked your way up the ladder in this industry and really come to the head of commercial at Clink Hostels. What advice do you give to someone who's building their career in revenue and commercial management?
Well, the first advice, and I hope people that are listening is they like football, because otherwise they might not get the metaphor, is like to be a good forward in football or in soccer, depends where you're listening this, right? You should not go running towards the ball. You should running towards where the ball will be, right? So you should anticipate the market trends. And if you try, for example, especially when it comes to technology, if you try to be the best on things that are current now, by the time you actually become very good at it, the system has already changed. So try to understand what are the future trends in the market, what is there for you, and try to specialize on those. And I give a very concrete example. I have someone in my team that is brilliant, if I would say, in TikTok. When he started saying like 1 or 2 years ago that you should focus on TikTok, no one was taking him serious. And now when TikTok is invited to the Google and Booking.com conferences, and maybe the main social media for travel, now we're taking him serious. And luckily we took him serious and he did like a great job. So find what we are very good at it and develop. Because in today's world, it's almost impossible for you to be excellent at every single thing. So try to identify a future trend and specialize on that and make sure that you're very good at it, because you're going to be taken. I think that's my first advice. And second is don't give up, because especially when you're coming for an industry like hospitality, it's very volatile, very difficult. And I think the pandemic showed us how volatile and how difficult things were. But if you are passionate and if you are good doing what you do, you're going to be taken back when things will improve. And it doesn't matter how many pandemics are eating us in the way, how many wars, how many economic crises, how many inflation crises, people still like to travel. You know, Ryanair did last year the best year ever. And if people cannot stay in 5-star hotels, maybe they will stay in campings or they will stay in 1-star hotels, but people still want to travel. So I think travel will always be a thing. So be passionate and be good at what you do. Things will go out okay for you.
Awesome. Diogo Vaz Ferreira, thank you very much for joining me today. And
Thank you,
I
Ryan.
can't wait to look forward to seeing you in person at the IHTF 2024 in a couple of months.
Exactly, in Barcelona, in sunny Barcelona.
Look forward to seeing you there. Thank you ever so much again.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Be in touch.
For more, go to Travel Market Life. The music sensation by Zach Nelson is reproduced under license from Storyblocks. Travel Market Life is a Haynes Marcoms digital marketing agency production, serving the travel and technology industries.